was 18 when I almost died in a car accident. My friend Kristen was driving, and our other friend Tim was in the car in front of us. We were cruising along a twisty mountain road with a sheer drop-off on one side. Kristen had to swerve suddenly to avoid hitting Tim's car, but she lost control of the truck, and we started to slide towards the edge of the cliff. As we careened towards the edge, I felt like I was in slow motion. My whole life flashed before my eyes, and I thought, this is it. This is how I'm gonna die. At the last second, the truck swerved 90 degrees and crashed into a big pine tree, wrapping the front of the truck around the trunk. As an unusual sensation coursed through my body, a vehement no resounded in my psyche. Whether it was my own inner voice, that of my companion, or some other phenomenon remains indistinct. Suddenly, the vehicle careened and rotated sharply, propelling us headlong into the trajectory of a looming arboreal colossus. At that moment, an uncontainable scream ruptured from my throat as we collided with the tree, inducing almost indescribable jolt. Though my safety belt was securely fastened, I was engulfed by an enveloping darkness, leaving me in a state of profound unconsciousness. Upon slowly opening my eyes, I was immediately cognizant of my companion's uncontrollable weeping and howling. Trapped, immobile and struggling to breathe, I attempted to vocalize, but no sound could be uttered. I found myself enveloped in a vacuum tube of sorts, as if I were being propelled skyward and detached from my earthly vessel rising aloft through the truck's roof. The truck itself disappeared from view, though I did witness Tim frantically making his way toward it. His car was askew on the precipice, having lodged itself into the snowbank at the roadside. Momentarily, another vehicle emerged on the opposite avenue, bearing an acquaintance from our scholastic era who had been previously entwined with Christ. Hastily abandoning his door, he scampered to our aid, bellowing and beset by tears. After that, all was obscured by an inscrutable darkness. I was shrouded within an unusual tunnel, albeit the terminology may be imprecise. It was obscurely gloomy in every direction, and I sensed myself inexorably drawn towards an estimated glimmering resplendence in the distance. My trajectory was irrevocably influenced as I drew nigh to my destination, and ultimately I sensed a presence in my midst. Herein I encountered three distinct figures, each separate and yet conjoined. It's difficult to articulate the union. I perceived the countenances, each variant subtle but also consistent. The central figure, without a spoken utterance, greeted me, and seemingly, though solely this sole entity was visible, a steadfast impression of three persisted. Why dost thou find thyself within these hallowed grounds? Came the inquiry, though I was confounded by its implications. The weight of a commanding presence bore down upon me, drawing me inexorably towards him. Though uncertain of my surroundings, I yearned to follow him, to bask in the glow of their authority. When I declared my ignorance as to the reason for my presence, I could sense a slight disapprobation emanating from him, until abruptly I found myself suspended within a shape, not quite a body, though it felt as if I were lying down. Perhaps it was near the tree where my accident occurred, yet the place bore no resemblance to the location of the incident. Instead, it appeared untouched by human hands, pristine and pure. The beauty of the surroundings was otherworldly, an intense clarity that illuminated everything. The colors were vivid, without shadows or darkness. Peacefulness and perfection suffused the atmosphere, leaving me in awe. It was then that I perceived their presence, a being looking down on me from above. Rising to my feet, I gazed at him, always struck. "Pray tell, whence came thee?" inquired he, his voice resonating with a solemn aura. "My being is at loss, I know not," I replied without uttering a word, for the perplexity of this unearthly encounter had left me speechless. "Dost thou recall the happenings that led thee unto this realm?" inquired he with an air of patience. "Nay, my lord, remembrance of your eludes my wit," I answered, still in a state of bewilderment. "Art thou familiar with mine essence?" he questioned, his tone bearing a melancholic cadence, a tone uncharacteristic of the sternness of his prior inquisition. "My cognition doth falter, thy visage escapes me," Stern replied, my confusion only deepening with each query. "Thus thou canst not tarry, forlorn wanderer. Thou must depart," he pronounced with irrevocable finality. Overwhelmed, I implored, "Nay, I beseech thee, grant me abode in this realm. Suffer me not to return whence I came." Yet his resolve remained steadfast. Suddenly, as though I was being drawn into a great abyss, the vacuum pulled me back towards my physical form, which lay still at the side of the crash. I recall hearing Chris wailing, Oh my God. Oh my God, she's dead. She isn't breathing. Help. Yet I knew these words had already been uttered moments ago. Tim struggled to force open my car door, his efforts impeded by the mangled metal. As he called out to me, my body snapped back to life, only for me to hear of my own demise once more. Behold, sight did greet mine eyes as a fire truck and ambulance did pull up. And lo, a highway patrol car did approach with haste. The fireman and rescue team did approach, as Tim, who had held me fast, did release me whilst conversing with one of the rescuers who did examine me with speed and efficiency. Tim did recount the events that had transpired whilst the rescue team sought to find a way to open the door of the truck upon the drive side. In the midst of this, a highway patrol officer did arrive and with much agitation did exclaim to the civilians to depart from said scene and make way. It was then that I did return to my corporeal form, assailed by sensations of bitter cold, excruciating pain, and the density of each object surrounding me, even the very atmosphere was palpable. Upon opening my eyes, I beheld my friends weeping in relief at my awakening, and one fireman spake, "Oh, I was certain we had lost thee for a fleeting moment." Alas, the highway patrol officer did approach in a boorish manner and inquired as to the happenings of the tragic event. The fireman did stand back, allowing the officer space, yet did not depart. Quoth the officer, "What befell thee?" As mine mind did recall being asked such before, albeit not by this same voice nor countenance, I did simply consider him. He asked once again, to which I did not respond, and thus he requested my name. Alas, I could not recollect it, nor aught about myself or my surroundings. The officer did become furious, accusing us of libations and stating that we were but damn teenagers. The fireman did intercede, asserting that the accident had left me traumatized and nearly lifeless, and he instructed the officer to depart and question another. Verily, that doth mark the conclusion of mine experience, as it hath transpired. Gradually, mine memory did return in its entirety within the span of few sunsets, yet those days proved exceedingly peculiar. The absence of recollections, barring those entwined with the said encounter, did render me with a sense of detachment from all others. The world wherein I then found myself seemed alien, an unfamiliar realm, unlike the harmonious and delightful abode I had previously inhabited, where joy and serenity did radiate. Of a certainty, I cannot ascertain the precise nature of that from which I felt estranged. Early, there came a time when it seemed I no longer belonged upon this terrestrial plane. A profound disjunction with existence in this realm did settle within my being. The tangible aspects of reality, the palpable nature of all things, took on an air of strangeness and unfamiliarity. In truth, even the comings and goings of people appeared peculiar, although I suspect this sentiment arose from my inability to recollect their presence or the experiences shared in their company. Once the recollection of my past returned to me, a fervent preoccupation seized my thoughts. I became consumed by the need to unravel the events that had unfolded, to comprehend their significance, and to discern the reason why the hand of fate had chosen me as its instrument. Pray, I must confess, ere this encounter transpired, my spirit harbored no inclination towards matters divine. My lineage, bereft of devoutness, refrained from expounding upon subjects religious, thus leaving me unfamiliar with the teachings of Jesus and the tenets of Christianity. It was only through the counsel of a companion in whose carriage I found myself that the notion of the three entities I had encountered as a trinity, yet indivisible, was posited. Alas, due to my lack of knowledge concerning the nature of Jesus, I regrettably felt compelled to withdraw myself from their presence. Verily, though ignorance overshadowed my understanding in that very moment, it was not until much later, when I delved into the wisdom of literature, that I chanced upon an enlightenment of sorts, leading me to surmise that indeed it may have been the Holy Trinity I had unknowingly beheld. I've often pondered the events of that day, wondering if they were real or imagined. My first husband, who was raised Presbyterian, told me that if they were real, it was the devil trying to take my soul and trick me. I eventually became a Christian and now believe that it was a sign of what awaits us on the other side of death. Even in the immediate aftermath, I was not afraid of dying per se, only of the pain and trauma that might precede it. But after that, it would be a state of being that is beyond compare. Alas, I was sent back. I often wonder about the experiences of those who are not Christian. Do they not have a life after death? Or does our belief impact where we go or how we experience that next stage? Perhaps if you are a Christian, you spend eternity with Jesus, God, in what we call heaven. If you are not a Christian, I do not believe that you cease to exist or go to hell. I believe that you simply experience something different, not necessarily bad, but just different. It is as if you are living on earth, but not in Jesus' house. You still live, but you live in a different place. When my father passed away from cancer at the age of 30, I was deeply troubled by the Christian doctrine that those who do not believe in Jesus Christ will not spend eternity in heaven. Did this mean that my father would go to hell, or would he simply cease to exist? I could not accept either of these possibilities. I had always been fascinated by the paranormal, and I had several experiences with what I believed to be spirits of the dead. These experiences had occurred both before and after my near-death experience. I believed that these experiences were evidence that we live on in some way after our bodies die. The experience may be different for different people, but I believe that our souls continue on. I had had too many experiences to believe anything else. When my father was nearing the end of his life, we received a call from the hospital one morning informing us that he was in the final stages of death and that we should come immediately. We gathered ourselves and made the 40-minute drive to the hospital, which was located in the valley below my parents' mountain home. As we drove, I found myself in a daze, watching the scenery pass by without really taking it in. Suddenly, I felt a strange sensation, as if a gust of wind had passed through me. It was so strong that it nearly took my breath away. I looked over at my mother, who was driving, but she didn't seem to notice anything. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard and saw that it was 10:43 a.m. I knew what had just happened. It was my father saying goodbye. I could feel his presence all around me, and I knew that he was at peace. When we arrived at the hospital, the nurse told us that he had passed away at 10:40 a.m. I had always been a sensitive person, and I had experienced strange things before, such as flashes of scenes that came true in seeing spirits and shadow people. However, this experience was different. It was so powerful and real that I could not deny it. In the years since my father's death, I've learned to cope with my experiences and live a normal life. I've learned to block out the things that I don't like and to simply accept what comes my way. However, I still think about my experience often, and I'm curious about other people's experiences and how they compare to mine. I believe that my experience was a gift from my father. It was his way of letting me know that he was okay and that he would always be with me. I am grateful for this gift and I will cherish it always.